All right, guys, this video, and by the way, it's late, but this video is about role playing and religion and something I've noticed. And maybe this is just in my group, but maybe you guys can let me know if you've ever encountered such. Um, any of you who followed me for any period of time, especially before I went on the I'm going to delete my whole channel thing, know that I especially am a huge fan of the RPG Pundits Baptism of Fire. And the reason is very simple. It's a great game system and a even better setting. Because the reality is almost every setting you run into, except for Talislanta, is just a copy of some real world thing, whether it's the Forgotten Realms basically being a hodgepodge of Western European bullshit, Greyhawk being a hodgepodge of Western European whatever. I mean, that's just what it is. And every setting's that way. Al-Qadim, it's all just whatever, right? So if you're going to play in a game that's a shadow of a real world place, excuse me, having a sip of some zero sugar Dr. Pepper to protect me from radiation, just in case. If you're going to play a game in a facsimile of a real place, why not just play in the real place? And the RPG Pundit does that very well with his setting, which is 9th and 10th century, 10th century, 11th century, really, Poland. So it's right about when the Piast family is starting to unify Poland and get all the other nobles, in line. And of course, they're using Christianity kind of as the fulcrum to unite all these different tribes of Poles. Because just because people are Polish don't mean they're all the same, right? I mean, you've got different Slavs here and there and the other place and different clans, whatever, that are held together maybe by shared language, but that's about it, right? In this world, you have the church. This is prior to the actual splitting of the church, so it's a little muddled between Orthodox and Roman Catholic. It's just the church, really. But the fact of the matter is, if you want to play a religious character, like a good guy type religious character, like, most players want to, you are going to be a servant in one way or another of the church. And even if you're just a warrior or an archer or a woodsman or something like that, chances are you are going to believe in the strictures and the ritual and all that of the church, because it's such a huge part of the culture that it just is what it is. And when I say the church, I mean exactly that. Whether it's Roman Catholic or more Eastern Rite, it doesn't matter. It's you're going to mass, you're, possibly talking to the priest about, confession, maybe taking communion, whatever you do. And you could actually play a priest. And your character's job in game, when not actually, getting involved in some shenanigans, you could be the leader of a congregation, or you could be a holy warrior who basically is decided they will devote their martial skill to spreading the word of Christ at the end of a sword if need be, right? Lots of stuff like that. You might be able to play like a wise woman that, just helps out, like that. Now, one thing you can never do is be a female priest. That is just right out. But, you know, that's culturally correct. That's historically correct. So, making it like changing that, I think would be a step too far. Now, to the crux of my problem here, right? I have players who have no problem playing clerics of you name it. Ishtar, frickin' basically any god ever. They'll play these characters. They'll play, they'll worship Heronius or Hextor, whoever they worship, right? And that's cool because we're playing D&D, and if you're playing a cleric, regardless of what later versions of D&D try to lie to the young and impressionable, clerics have to worship a god. That's just what it is. You're a cleric. You belong to a religion. Religions are based around the tenets and worship of a god. And there's no this whole, I believe in myself. No, that's called Satanism. And in itself is a religion. You're just trying to make a god of yourself instead of, a higher power, right? That's typically for your extreme narcissists who cannot imagine that there could be something in the universe of a higher order than themselves. I personally, keep an eye on those guys, because people who think that they are the center of, creation are probably not the best people to hang out with. However, I try to talk the players in playing Baptism of Fire, and all of a sudden, certain players who normally would have no problem with a cleric worshiping Poseidon or any other thing get antsy about it because they're like, oh, I don't know, it's too churchy, blah, 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 right? Now, these people, I don't know if they're atheists, what their problem is. They're not, devout Christians, I don't suppose. But it kind of puts this weird thought in my head, like where it's like, okay, if you're an atheist and you're playing D&D and you have no problem with your fellow players playing clerics of all these different gods, right? You're totally cool with that. It doesn't bother you one bit. But having a player play a priest devoted to the Holy Trinity and the church, that kind of puts you in a weird spot, right? And that puts me in a weird spot, because now I'm wondering to myself, this is a self-proclaimed atheist or whatever they are, but deep down inside, they fear God. And the idea of playing in a game where God is an effectual thing that they will have to deal with really bothers them. And it's like, it's so strange, it's like, okay, if you don't believe the Holy Trinity is real, that God is real, that any of that is real, then playing a game with them in it shouldn't bother you any more than playing a game where, people are playing Heronius or, the Raven Queen or any of the other gods that are depicted in D&D just in general, right? But the fact that this is the God, that causes issues. And I think that, like I said, I have a player that I'm going to end up working it out with them. Either they're just not going to play the game, or they're going to deal with it, right? But the point I guess I'm making is they get aggravated about the game and the Christianity in the game. because even though they claim to be atheists deep down inside, they doubt that, they're right. They have this weird thought where they're like not 100% sure that they're on the right side of things. So they hate to be faced with it. At least that's my thought. If you guys watching the video have ever dealt with this problem, tell me how you felt about it and how you handled it and everything like that. Did it cause a problem? Did you end up working it out? Would you play in a game like Baptism of Fire where one of the people in your group is quite literally a priest of the church out doing priest things? And somebody might actually be a holy warrior, a crusader, whose whole mission is to convince the pagans to accept Jesus Christ as their savior. And if it becomes an issue with them, to put them down, right? Is that the kind of game that you would ever consider playing? And if so, then pick up Baptism of Fire, because, it's an amazing game. Even without all that, it's just an amazing game. But if that's not a game you would consider playing, why? What about that makes it where you're just like, nope, don't want any part of it? Why? Is it a fear of God? Is it a fear of the church? Like, what's actually going on here? That's what I want to know. So peace and love, and hopefully I can get some answers back, and that will help me with my own queries and quandaries. My trench board has come along magnificently. I just ordered some 4-inch by 1-inch by 4-foot long boards that I'm going to build a wall around it. That will keep it much sturdier than it currently is. And additionally, it'll keep any miniatures from falling off of it. Plus, when I paint it up, it'll just look much better. Make it easier for storing and everything. So anyway, peace and love. And until we meet again, if I didn't see you in this video, hopefully I'll see you in the next. And tell your friends. Maybe you've got friends that's been through something like this. Maybe ask them, have you ever played a game where somebody acted weird because, like Christianity was in the game? It's like playing Al-Qadim and not having Islam in the game. It's like, why would you do that? How are you going to play as a member of the Caliphate but ignore the fact that the Caliphate was an Islamic nation? Makes no sense. But that's just me.